Guys, I'm gonna agree with you. I don't have much time. They're after me. I've discovered the truth about the Pop Crave industrial complex. Pop Crave, Pop Juice, Pop Flop, all of its partners in crime are incredibly sinister, and it's all one psyop. It's one psyop to make us constantly argue about stupid rage bait on their posts. It doesn't matter. I already gotta go. The cops are clearly after me. Please listen to what I'm saying. Please heed my warning. Listen, I swear I'm not court mandated to talk about this lady once a month. However, despite the warning I have given 2 times now, people on the internet continue to be extremely weird about her, and in this case, purposefully obtuse. So, quick background, Chappell Roan is a famous LGBTQ drag queen and pop singer. Chappell has had quite the unprecedented meteoric rise over the last, 11 months. I have 2 other videos about her, you should check them out. I'm debating just making an entire playlist at this point. But because Chappell Roan is suddenly very popular, everybody wants to talk to her, and she keeps giving interviews. And those interview quotes make for very good engagement bait because Chappell Roan is a very controversial and polarizing pop star, mainly because she tends to speak very off the cuff and is very honest and vulnerable about her experiences with fame, not all of them positive. I like Chappell Roan's music. I've defended her on here about the fact that she's very honest toward her relationship with fame. I think it's fine, and in some cases very refreshing. Do I agree with every take that I've read of hers out of context from the original interview on a Pop Crave adjacent account? No, but it seems as though this cycle that repeats itself every week is starting to get under people's skin, and today I would like to explore why. So this whole controversy started over the weekend when The Guardian released an interview with Chappell Roan. One of the things that the article references is the moment at Governor's Ball earlier this year. I actually happened to be there for this, when Chappell Roan came out on stage in drag dressed as the Statue of Liberty and revealed that she refused to perform at the White House for Pride. The interviewer presumably asks Chappell Roan about this moment, and she says, "I have so many issues with our government in every way. There are so many things that I would want to change, so I don't feel pressured to endorse someone. There's problems on both sides. I encourage people to use your critical thinking skills, use your vote small, vote for what's going on in your city." Now, this is a pretty bad quote, especially clipped out of context because she's not being clear. When that whole Governor's Ball moment happened, she made it pretty clear that she was specifically referring to the US government's ongoing relationship with Israel. I know that because before she said she wasn't going to come to the White House to perform for Pride, she said that she was calling for the freedom of all oppressed people in occupied territories, and while she didn't name Palestine specifically in that moment either, she went on to elaborate about this moment where she decided not to perform for Pride in a Rolling Stone article in which she says, "I had picked out some poems from Palestinian women. I was trying to do it as tastefully as I could because all I wanted to do was yell. I had to find something that's tasteful and to the point and meaningful and not make it about me and how I feel." Chappell ultimately decided against this plan because of a talk with her publicist, in which her publicist allegedly told her, "You fuck with the president and the government, your security is not the same and neither is your family's." The end of this article even addresses the fact that this was controversial at the time that she did it because people misinterpreted it as an endorsement of Donald Trump and the Republican Party, which is kind of what's happening now. So, a snippet of this most recent Guardian interview gets posted on Pop Flop, and the quote that they picked ends with, "There's problems on both sides," and there's a picture of Kamala Harris next to Chappell. It is quite literally crafted to be rage bait. Okay, so like I alluded to earlier, the most wild misinterpretation that I've been seeing of this quote is that Chappell Roan is a Republican, which, From what I understand, the way that people are coming to this conclusion is the "there's bad people on both sides" quote, which again is a bad quote because it's not clear, it's kind of a false equivalence. It leaves a lot of room for misinterpretation or explicit bad faith interpretation, especially if you're just scrolling through your timeline and you see this quote divorced from its original intent. Because when she's saying there's bad people on both sides, she means that in the context of a more left-leaning perspective, because both sides, both parties of the US government are endorsing the actions of Israel. But they're also coupling that lack of specificity with another out-of-context quote in which she says that she loves her Republican family members. Ergo, Chappell Roan, the drag queen who is now a daughter of Sasha Colby, one of the most famous drag queens in the world, who has been expressly outspoken for the advancement of LGBTQ rights here in the US, is somehow a Republican. Now, like I said, that is the dumbest interpretation of this that I've seen so far. The more common take that I'm seeing is that in a high-stakes election like this one, this kind of take from somebody with a lot of prominent influence is cowardly. Because sure, both parties are essentially the same when it comes to foreign policy, although it is worth noting here that if Donald Trump were elected, he would probably be like materially worse for the will and interests of the Palestinian people. We still got a lot going on domestically. Abortion is at stake. LGBTQ rights. Things that are definitely of interest to folks in Chappell's fan base, that the Democratic Party, objectively, by default, has better opinions on. And so the lack of an endorsement in some people's eyes is equal to cowardice because all of these other things are at stake. However, I think this goes back to the fact that this quote is part of a larger conversation between Chappell Roan and an interviewer. It's not an official statement. She's not coming out and saying, don't vote. In this same passage, she's encouraging people to vote in their local and city elections. It's not like she's entirely politically uninformed. She just does not support both parties of the federal government based on their current foreign policy positions. I think she would perhaps benefit from, again, being a little bit more specific, you know, maybe saying, I will not vote for the Democratic candidate unless they commit to doing XYZ. But with regard to the statement that she did actually put out, I see somebody who is very afraid of saying the wrong thing. We've already established that in some ways Chappell is battling with the pressure of fame. She is presumably very aware of her large left-leaning fan base. And of course, she has expressed her own empathy for the suffering of the Palestinian people. So if she endorses Kamala Harris, she's going to get called a genocide supporter. And if she doesn't endorse Kamala Harris, she's going to get called a Republican. And of course, there should be more nuance to that conversation. However, this is the internet where everything is black and white all the time, especially when every entertainment interviewer is naturally going to ask for celebrities' opinions on the US election because they're looking to get a soundbite on where the celebrity stands. And I don't necessarily mean that in a malicious or uncharitable way. They're doing their jobs by asking those questions, and art and entertainment and politics have all kind of become the same thing. It's all part of the same culture war. But then what happens is these celebrities are pressured to give answers that they don't really want to give because they're not trying to alienate anybody in their fan base specifically. And that's how we get statements of empty nothingness like both sides are bad that get cherry-picked and posted on Twitter by PopFlop, repeat cycle until the inevitable heat death of the universe. So, do I think that Chappell Roan's lack of an endorsement of Kamala Harris is a big deal? No, not necessarily. I think the majority of folks in her fan base are either voting for Kamala or they're not voting at all. And I'm sure there are a lot of folks in her fan base who are, you know, begrudgingly voting for the Democrats with a harm reduction mindset. And I'm not telling you how to feel either way, but I think there are a couple reasons why this specific quote from Chappell Roan is rubbing so many people the wrong way. I think when she made this stance about not performing at the White House for Pride, it was a little bit of a different impact because Biden was still presumably going to be the nominee this time around, and she was specifically criticizing his administration. And I think there was a lot of doomerism surrounding Joe Biden around this time, one, because of his administration's actions while handling Israel, and two, because they saw his decision to stay in the race as selfish and a lost cause, and they thought it was highly unlikely that he would win again. Obviously, we know Joe Biden dropped out of the race. Now Kamala Harris is running to be president, leading to a rejuvenated spirit within the Democratic Party, but also this pressure from some people to be like, okay, it's not Joe Biden, you got what you wanted, it's not Joe Biden. We can't criticize Kamala because it is imperative for her to win this election against Donald Trump. So not only are the vibes different, we're closer to the election than we were then, so the stakes are kind of different, but also we did just see a pretty big celebrity endorsement make a material impact in this race. A few weeks ago, following the presidential debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, Taylor Swift posted on Instagram that she was endorsing Harris as well as her vice president candidate, Tim Walz. Following Taylor Swift's endorsement, Vote.gov reported an influx of 400,000 people who had specifically followed Taylor Swift's link, meaning that there is definitive proof that Taylor Swift, for some reason, converted people who weren't previously going to vote into active voters. Now, I think this is a little different than the case with Chappell Roan because obviously Taylor Swift is the biggest pop star in the whole world. There was kind of a little bit of a mystery as to who she was actually going to endorse for president because prior to her endorsement, there was a whole controversy where she was seen hugging Brittany Mahomes, who is a known and vocal Trump supporter. And so people were like, oh, is she only like conveniently liberal when it benefits her, which is not what you want to hear if you're Taylor Swift's marketing team. But whether Taylor Swift's endorsement was genuine or just done entirely out of self and image preservation, you know for a fact that if she endorsed Kamala Harris, she wasn't going to like be criticizing her positions on Israel and Palestine in any way. because Taylor Swift doesn't do that. Whereas Chappell has made a specific kind of activism a part of her brand, and so therefore if she did endorse Kamala Harris, she would essentially be seen as a traitor to those kinds of leftist ideals. Overall, I think this controversy is pretty dumb and says more about our propensity to gravitate toward meaningless rage bait than it does about Chappell Roan and her political views. I think because Chappell's existence in the public eye has always had sort of an inherently political edge to it, interviewers are going to continuously push her to take a definitive stance on the US election and other political issues, and I think she's aware of that, and I don't think she wants that, and I think there's an entire market of secondhand celebrity gossip bullshit that benefits from that awkward in-between space, because it's way easier to paint Chappell Roan as a Republican or somebody who's just straight up uneducated about, ongoing political dealings in the US, rather than a more charitable interpretation of somebody who might need to be a little bit more careful with their words. And I'm saying this as someone who doesn't even 100% agree with everything Chappell has said, but I also understand that if I were in her position, I would not say everything perfectly either.